Episode 95. Are those real? Welcome back to One Extraordinary Marriage, where we talk about life, love, and the pursuit of intimacy. You're here with Alisa DiLorenzo.
And Tony DiLorenzo.
And I'm giggling a little bit because it took us 3 tries to actually get through the intro tonight.
We hope you guys are digging the intros. We're having some fun.
If not, that's okay too, because we actually, one of the outtakes tonight was that we tried to go back to our original music, and I just wasn't feeling the love on it. I'm like, we need a song tonight.
So we're going there.
We're going there. So hope that you all have had a good week.
To those of our fans in Oklahoma, we hope you're doing well after your 5.6 earthquake you had.
Fans in Oklahoma, good grief. You guys have you've
had
it all this year. Weather-wise, I don't even know where to start. You
guys have had it all. So we just hope you guys are safe.
We know you're not used to the earthquakes out there. And
right.
So it's a whole different sensation, rocking and rolling. Yeah. We actually are recording this on a night where we had thunder and lightning here in San Diego.
Which is really rare for us.
Yeah, our kids are looking at us like, what is that? Because our kids don't experience thunder and lightning.
Yeah. And we hope all of you, as we come into this wintry time of year, find some opportunities to cuddle up and enjoy each other and keep each other warm. We have not turned on our heat yet in our house. So Alisa and I are cuddling at times at night when we remember to. Again, we have the king-size bed, so we tend to be on opposite sides. So we just dress up and warm ourselves up at times. But hopefully you will find some time to grab a cup of hot cocoa or a nice hot tea and grab yourselves a movie and cuddle
up or spend time. Some of you that really enjoy the winter weather, if you haven't listened to us through a winter, you know that we're not huge fans of snow, ice, any of that kind of stuff. It's a reason we live in San Diego, one of them. But we know that some of you actually are huge fans of the snow. So you can take that and, get out and explore the snow with your honey and do,
enjoy
all that kind of winter stuff that, just makes my skin crawl.
Yeah. And to all of our new listeners, thank you for joining us. Mm-hmm. We want to just say we appreciate you listening. And for all of you guys who've been listening and continue to refer your friends and family, we are very thankful. This past week, I was out at Blog World in LA and had the opportunity to meet a number of different bloggers and new media hosts and just a plethora of individuals and people. And it was very fun to talk about One Extraordinary Marriage to them because everybody wanted to know how it started. Mm-hmm. And obviously, we start with episode number 1, 60 Days of Sex. So that's where I start. And that usually perks up people's ears and they get interested very quickly. And if one of you is here listening at this episode from Blog World, hey, I thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. And, I've heard from a number of people, it just seems like over this last week, we've had a lot of people talking about how they're sharing One Extraordinary Marriage. And, that is so appreciated because we know from what you've told us that there's a message here that needs to get out, that you tell us repeatedly that we are talking about things that others aren't talking about. Mm-hmm. And it's because we made a decision in episode 4 that we were going to be transparent with you. That was going to be the way that we not only, that's who we are, just, if you met us on the street, that's who we'd be. But it was a commitment we made to this podcast almost 100 episodes ago. We are on the downhill slide and we're closing in on 100 and I'm so excited. We've got 5 more weeks. And, but, we talked a little bit about transparency last week. I was talking about a conversation that I'd had with a girlfriend where I just kind of, was very honest with her and it allowed her to open up and share something that had been on her heart, and I talked in that last episode how she, she's like, well, I'm feeling, kind of heart palpitations and sweaty hands. Although I might be adding that because I just know that Tony gets sweaty hands whenever he's talking about something big or if we have to have a conversation, sweaty hands. And I actually saw the same girlfriend this week and she came up to me. She's like, I got to tell you something. And she shared something else that was going on in life. And she goes, well, because we're so close now. And I realized that the reason she felt that we were so close was because I had chosen to lay it out there, to run the risk of being judged. And I'm going to do that again tonight. It's been almost 2 years into this podcast, and I have never shared this on the air.
Well, and for a number of reasons, and we can get into those.
We will. I'm going to be talking about plastic surgery.
Breast augmentation.
Breast augmentation specifically. Tonight. And we're going to talk about it. So if you're not interested, I'm not going to go into the nuts and bolts of my particular surgery, the physical part of it, but I am going to talk about the why. And I'm going to talk about the impact it's had on our marriage. And
I think we should also talk about the years of agonizing that took place prior to having breast implants.
Part of the reason I've thought about sharing this with you guys for a long time, because I've learned over the last, am I going on 3 years?
No.
2 years.
Yes.
2 years surgery.
2 years in December.
Okay, so it was right before we started the podcast.
Exactly.
Yeah. I've thought about sharing my story over the last 2 years. And very much like it's come out when I've shared it with other friends, there is that very much that risk of judgment.
Right.
Now for us, we live in San Diego. Plastic surgeons and breast augmentation is very commonplace here. But it still does bear some of the stigma that I think, happens in other parts of the country. And I've been very open with my family. All my relatives know. Tony's family knows, because when I had my surgery 2 years ago, it was 2 weeks before Christmas. And
right.
2 days before Alex's birthday party. Yeah, timing was everything. But I came...
And we can talk about why it happened there as well, but let's go from there.
I need to take you back. I was always flat-chested. With the exception of having my children, when my surgeon looked at me, she's like, "You are flat as a board." She goes, we see needy and we see greedy. She goes, "You are so on the needy side." And it's a good thing I'd already heard good things about her, and I liked her rapport before she got to that, because I was like, wow, you're really... Yes, but I was, and I felt like a boy, and I never felt feminine. And it was never anything, and I want to be very, very clear about this. It was never any messages that I got from Tony.
Right.
It was never, "Honey, you need to have surgery." It was never, "I think you'd look better if you looked like this." I mean, I tried it all. I tried every gel padded push-up, whatever, from Victoria's Secret. And the fact of the matter is that if you've got nothing, there ain't nothing to push up, push together, pad, lift.
Right.
It's not there. And I really, I wrestled with the decision for a long, long time. I mean, I knew...
And I'm going to put this into perspective real quick for those of you who are still here listening with us. When we did our 60 Days of Sex Challenge, which was the year prior to Alisa actually going through with her surgery, we were in the middle of the 60-day challenge. And no kidding, so that's a year before she does this. We are in the middle of that. And Alisa is going through a major issue with should she go with surgery or not. And had, during that time...
Oh, yeah, I'd had a couple consults.
Checked out a couple doctors, was thinking she really wasn't there just yet, but the agony she was going through was causing me some craziness. And part of it was because we were during that 60 days, and I was just like, "Honey, just don't worry about that right now. Let's hone in on what is at hand, this task of us just being intimate together." But there were times, there was a good, probably solid 2 weeks in there. It was a constant struggle talking to her about it, trying to help her through to understand, or not understand, but just helping her to just sift through all the information she was getting. And feeling she was having.
That wasn't the first time that I had thought about having surgery 3 years ago when we were in the 60 days.
No.
I mean, I had thought about it prior. 3 years ago, I actually got serious and had a consult, but then I was kind of like, yeah, I'm not going to do this. And part of what I had to wrestle with and had to come to grips with is, you guys know I have a daughter. And I needed to, a daughter and a son, and I needed to be able to explain to myself how I would explain to them as they got older. Because, I didn't have my surgery until I was 35. And I really feel very strongly that I am able to explain to Abby that, you know what, I waited. I had my children. I was explaining to a friend a few weeks ago. I said, you know what, I work out and I eat right and I could change everything about my body, but this was one area that there was nothing I could do. And I didn't feel feminine. I didn't, wearing a bathing suit, that was part of the reason, Tony talks about me not wanting to go in the water. And for a number of years, it wasn't just that the water was cold. It was that I didn't feel like a woman in a bathing suit. If any of you have young daughters, I had that chest. And, it just got to a point where, it was right about this time, 2 years ago, that I went for my consult. And, I found... Well,
let's get into a little bit of the feelings, the emotion. Let's not rush to the consult just yet. But let's talk through this a little bit more in the sense so our listeners can understand other reasons why you waited, what you were struggling with as well, because I think some of them may be struggling with this as well, or they may have had breast augmentation but don't tell anybody about it.
Yeah, that's been so I had to be able to, in my own mind, and I talk about the kids. I've got a son who at some point in time is going to notice girls. And I didn't want it to be like, oh my gosh, well, my mom had a breast job, and now I'm focused on breasts. It's got to be all about the breasts. I want him to be able to see women and find them beautiful regardless of what they look like. And I've got a daughter that I don't want it to be all about the breasts for her. Like, I want to have breasts like mom, and so I need to have surgery. For me, it was, I found a man that loved me, flat-chested as I was. When he met me 17 years ago, and he's like, yeah, I'm a boob man. And I'm like, well, this is going to be short-lived. Yeah, because what you're looking at, it's all padded. There ain't nothing, and so, he got past that. There was more to me than my breasts, obviously, because there were none. And so, it was I had to be able to, work through, what would I tell my kids? How am I going to be able to explain this to them? How is this going to impact our relationship? Because I did have people say, well, are you just doing this for Tony? I'm like, no, Tony doesn't care one way or another.
And that is the truth.
Don't get me wrong. He definitely enjoys them.
Oh yeah.
Since I've had the surgery, he's not gonna send him back.
I haven't.
But it wasn't about Tony. It wasn't about, trying to do this as a marriage enhancement to say, okay, well, what, we're in this bad place and I need to, physically alter my appearance so that my husband loves me more or wants to be with me. It wasn't that. It really was like, I remember walking by a storefront and, everybody's done this. You look over and you see your reflection in the glass. And I was wearing a tank top and I didn't need to wear a bra because, again, what was it going to hold up? And I remember looking over and going, I'm 35 years old and I'm just flat. And I know some of you out there are thrilled with your bodies the way they are, and I applaud you. Hats off to you. For me, that's not where I was. And I wanted to feel more feminine. I wanted my clothes to fit the way the designers designed them. I wanted to be able to wear a bikini and not have to worry about 25 layers of padding just to get, an A cup. And so I made the decision that I had finally been able to work through, and I prayed. I needed to know that I had all my ducks in a row, and I just, I did. I sought God's wisdom in this just to say, what, am I totally whacked out here? Or is this something that I can do and still, feel okay with myself? And
and who you've made me.
And who, yeah, I mean, am I totally going against your creation here? And it was one of those things where I remember talking to a pastor and got the wry smile saying, do you know how many Christians have Botox or, get their eyebrows waxed or, do anything, color their hair? She goes, yes, this is a little more extreme than that, but that's all changing.
It's all vanity.
It's all vanity. It's all changing what God gave us. I mean, if I didn't dye my hair, I'd be gray, prematurely gray, thanks to Beth and Lou.
Yeah. And I like that you wax your eyebrows.
I like that I wax my eyebrows too, because I do have very full eyebrows when I don't get them waxed. So yes, these are, definitely we are talking about vanity tonight, but I will say that it also impacts your level of intimacy, how you feel about yourself. And I want it to be very clear that this surgery had nothing to do with my family. I had to be right in how I would relate to them as a result of this. And I do have to tell a funny story. So once I do decide that I'm having surgery, I have to prep the kids because I'm not going to be able to pick them up, or they're, Alex was at the height where he could, like, with his bear hugs, run into my chest and hurt me. So I told the kids I was having surgery on my chest because at the age that they were, I didn't need to go into the specifics that Mom was having augmentation done.
Right.
So I pick up Abby from school. One day she's in preschool, and she talks about how they were praying for me in school because I was having heart surgery. So I promptly turned the car around and went up to her teacher and said, just a little aside here, it's not heart surgery. She goes, okay, because we were a little bit worried. I said, no, it's augmentation. And she's like, oh, I can see why she thought it was heart surgery. But, making the decision, once I made the decision, and just, sometimes we find ourselves at a point in the road where we just we're at a fork. And I don't know how many times I got on I'm going to think about it a little bit longer loop. Years of, I'm going to check it out. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to check it out a little bit further. I was like on the carousel ride. And when I finally went and had the consult with my doctor, whom I love. After
weeks and weeks of looking at pictures and looking at
I probably looked at every breast augmentation website on the internet. Oh, good grief.
Talking to friends that she knew who had breast augmentation and finding out who they had gone through and all that. This isn't a quick decision by any stretch of the imagination. And we probably looked at more pictures than anybody could even imagine in the course of a couple of, 2-3 weeks. I mean, you're looking, and it's a big decision. And I'm going to say this from a husband's point of view. It's a big decision that I'm sitting here looking at going, wow, what happens if she goes in for this, basically a pretty easy procedure, and something wrong happens? So there are things going through my mind that I'm thinking about and talking with her. So it's, I think the reason we're bringing this up finally to you as a whole, as a group, is because a lot of couples do hide it. Mm-hmm. They don't talk about it to anybody else, and they almost feel a little bit of a shame, or, I don't know if it's a shame, but they just feel...
There's very much a sense of being judged.
A judge, yeah, that's better. And you don't have to. If you've gone through this, be proud. Be happy. My goodness, you did it for a reason. And I'll tell you, there was a little bit a time after that, Alisa, there was a time of just like, oh my gosh, what did I do? And finally we just said.
That's the initial, for those of you that haven't had augmentation, when it's initially done, you are very swollen and the implants sit what feels like it's right under your chin.
Yes.
So you wake up from surgery. The first time you look at yourself in the bathroom, I looked like I had bowling balls, grapefruits, not quite bowling balls, attached to my chest. And I had the first thought of, what have I done? And will this, this is not what I asked for. I specifically said, I do not want to look like a porn star. What is this? I had to be reminded it's just swelling.
Right.
Relax. But, you know, you do play all those scenarios. I did play the what if. What if something happens in surgery and then, you know, Tony has to explain to the kids that mom had complications because she was having breast augmentation. I mean, you play that scenario.
Sure.
You play the scenario of what if it doesn't turn out? And I've heard the horror stories about plastic surgery.
We read about them.
That hasn't gone well. And I'm not just talking about breast augmentation. I mean, there are women out there that want to have liposuction and, you know, breast reduction and just get the skin removed after weight loss. I mean, there's all kinds of...
Or baby
or whatever. There's so many different types of plastic surgery. And I do want to shed some light on this because I think, once again, you know, this is another one of those topics that doesn't get talked about unless you see it like on Oprah or, you know, one of the talk shows where, you know, somebody's having this extreme makeover and all of a sudden they're a new person. And in some respects you are. I mean, obviously physically you look different and, you know, but you're still that person you were before, but you have to be able to, you have to be at a good place. Mm-hmm. You know, doing that instantaneous, like you wake up one morning and I'm going to do this type of thing. Hard. I mean, it took me years to get there. And I have some friends that are contemplating plastic surgery in the future because they're, you know, in childbearing years and things like that. And, you know, it is something that they think about and we talk about because they know that I'm comfortable talking about it. And it's another one of those topics that we need to shed light on because some people do it for, like me, for vanity reasons. Some women are having augmentation or having implants because they're dealing with breast cancer, you know, and so if those women decide to have implants, then hats off to them. Again, it's like I was telling, you know, a friend a couple weeks ago, having implants, what it's done for me is it's made me feel more feminine, which directly impacts my intimacy with Tony. I feel sexier. I feel, you know, like I've got the curves in the places where they're supposed to be curves because I'm proportionate now. And that was what I told Dr. Saltz. I said, I just want to feel.
Yeah. So if any of you are looking for a great doctor after listening to Dr. Saltz in La Jolla, I forget the name.
La Jolla Cosmetic Surgery Center.
Yeah. Wonderful gal. I mean, she is just a hoot.
She's very dry.
She's
her
very
sense
dry.
Of humor.
But she's a hoot of a doctor. And if you're thinking, if you live in the area and you're thinking about a doctor, I gotta say she was just awesome. And I went in there for the consult and the surgery and all that. But she's just a great woman. And if you are looking into this, maybe you're listening to this and this is what you needed to hear. I will have to say, be comfortable with your doc.
Mm-hmm. I went to a number of different doctors before I settled on Dr. Saltz. And it was one of those things where I had a couple of doctors who, you know, looked at my frame and whatnot and actually wanted to put me on a smaller implant. And, you know, when you're in the doctor's office, you can kind of try on your size. And they have these bras where you stick the silicone implants in. And, well, anyway.
They're goofy. Can I say right now, too?
Yeah.
If you have questions or you want to even share your own story, you don't have to use your name. You can use an anonymous name. Call us, 858-876-5663, right?
Yeah.
858-876-5663. Call us. Let us know what you went through, how it may have, you know, even where you were before, how it has impacted you in your marriage. These are great things to share. We really do believe it because, again, it is so simple and so easy for all of us to put on masks and just not talk about and make believe to ourselves and to others that they're real, so that way we look like we are holier than thou before God.
Well, and it's funny that you should say that, you know, make believe that they're real because I didn't go super large, you know, no super size here. Women that didn't know me pre-surgery, you know, I've heard the comment. They're like, I'm so envious. I mean, yours are, you know, you've had kids and they're still perky. And I'm like, oh no, these are not real. These are, you know, I paid for these. And they look at me and their eyes get real big. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's okay. I paid for them. That's why they're perky and, you know, whatever. But the thing is that it's kind of like miscarriage. I give women permission to talk about this. When I find out that, a girlfriend's going through breast cancer, and I said, especially if they're here in San Diego, I'm like, well, if you're considering implants, I've got a great doctor, and their eyes get all big. And I'm like, I have them. These are not real. And then it opens up that door to have the conversation because, I'm not going to pretend they're real. I'm glad they look real. I'm glad if you don't know me and you're just passing me on the street, you're like, wow, those are nice. But on the other hand, for my friends, for women that might be hurting because they don't feel good about themselves and, implants might just be what they need to feel more feminine, then I want to be someone that they can come and talk to.
And that's it, you guys. This is what it's about. It's being real. It's about taking off our masks wherever you are and impacting lives. It's something that Alisa and I have talked to from the beginning. And it's what we want to empower you to do more and more in your lives with your husband or your wife or with those around you. Mm-hmm. Because by doing that, we here as a community can impact so many people that you don't even know that you don't even know where they're at unless you just open your mouth. And we hope that by sharing what Alisa has gone through and what we've gone through over the last couple of years, that you have been able to take off those masks in your marriage, obviously, first and foremost, because that is where a huge impact happens. Mm-hmm. You guys have done it. Those of you who have done a 7 days of sex challenge, those of you who've attempted 60 days, completed, like Tammy and Kevin, 47 out of 60. You guys know the impact it has when you start taking off those masks and you start sharing what is happening in life. And I'm telling you, folks, you have the ability in your communities, in your churches, in your schools, in your neighbors' lives to have an impact. If you just open up your mouth a little bit, let go, take those masks off, share.
It's also one of those things too, when you start to live your life without worrying about the judgment that you're going to get from others. When I shared, for me, it comes up a lot because, a few years ago when I first started, I guess it was my second year with Leah Sophia, if I've been doing this for 3 years. And I asked the question at one of my parties, I'm like, what would you do with an extra $1,000? And one of the gals was like, plastic surgery. And I said, funny, that's a great answer. Me too. And they're like, what? And I said, oh yeah, my second year in the business, I paid for my plastic surgery with my earnings. And, again, eyes get big because all of a sudden I've opened it up. And would you know there were 8 women sitting there and they've all thought of having plastic surgery?
Wow.
Or when I, mention it to girlfriends, we're sitting around talking and everybody's like, oh yeah, I'd fix this or I'd fix that. And I say, well, you know what? I had augmentation. You did? How was? And all of a sudden everybody wants to talk about it because so many women have thought about having plastic surgery. And while I can't speak to anything else besides augmentation, I can speak to the mental process that I went to going there. I can speak to, what it's like when you wake up and you're like, oh, what did I do?
Yeah, that wasn't fun.
Yeah, the first day, not so good. Not so good. I mean, it was a little nausea.
A lot of frozen peas.
Frozen peas are
we had frozen onions too, but we had to throw those out. Those weren't smelling good.
Yeah, frozen onions are, when they thaw and refreeze and not so good.
Not so good.
But
prep, if you have kids, make sure you have them somewhere where they're gone for a good portion of the day, and then dad can go pick them up in the evening. And
we actually had friends bring everybody back, and I was just very well padded and insulated from the kids. And it's not an easy surgery.
Nope.
I was talking to somebody the other day, and I'm like, be prepared to basically lie on your back for 2 weeks because you can't roll because they want them to settle. But I wouldn't change all the years that I thought about it. I wouldn't change that process because it definitely got me to a point where when I was ready to say, yes, it's time, that I knew that I had done my due diligence. And I also knew that moving forward, I was comfortable with who I was making that decision. It wasn't, for me, I wasn't a 20-something saying, well, you know what? I can't find a man. I'm going to go have surgery. It was no. I mean, at that point in time, we'd been married, 13 years?
Mm-hmm. And for those of you out there who have had it done, and maybe this is stirring some emotion in you, by all means, come to the oneextraordinarymarriage.com. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you went through, that mental, was there mental anguish that you went through? How long did it take you from the time you thought of it to the time you actually went through with it? Share. Because again, when we talk about opening up, by commenting there, when people come back and listen to this show, they can see that there are other women, other people who have thought through this. And even though it's not like Alisa's, it's their own, and maybe they can attach to you and understand where you're coming from. Because
it is different for every woman.
Mm-hmm.
Your reasons for doing it, where you are in life, how you and your spouse relate to one another. It all factors in. And, I wish that more women were open, either A, about their desire to have it done, or the fact that they have had it done. Because again, I mean, we live in Southern California. You can't pass a magazine stand without, seeing somebody on the cover, or, here on the beaches during the summer.
I wouldn't say the magazines.
Not the magazines, but
just
you just
overall.
See it walking around. I mean, I don't know what our plastic surgeon per capita is, but it's got to be up there. It's okay. It's okay. Is really, I don't want there to be a judgment on it. When I first told my mother-in-law, she's like, "Oh, I just thought you were wearing a really good padded bra." And I said, "Okay, I'll go with that."
Yeah.
And, I told my parents, I didn't tell Tony's parents until after, but I told my parents beforehand. And
why did you do that?
For me, it does go back to Andrew. After not telling my parents about Andrew until we were in a crisis situation. I mean, that had been a planned surprise for them. He was going to be their Christmas present, finding out about him, going through that crisis and having them not know until we were there. I couldn't do that again.
Right.
Just on the off chance that something did happen in surgery. I needed to tell my parents, and my mom and dad, God bless them. They were just like, "Oh, okay." I mean, really, I could have told them that it was another sunny day in San Diego. I mean, it wasn't, they were worried,
mm-hmm.
Just because you're worried anytime a loved one's going into surgery. But nothing from them. And I think with your parents, I knew I was going to be seeing them. And so it was just kind of like, you know what? We'll just wait until it's all done. And I knew I was going to be.
Well, I think we told my parents at a Christmas party.
We did. We told them at the Italian
Sons
club.
of Italy.
Yeah. After. I'm like, since we're all going to be getting together for Christmas in a couple weeks, I just want you to know I had augmentation last weekend. And my mother-in-law looked at me and she's like, "You what? How was it?" And all of a sudden I'm like, tell me all about it. I'm like, I'm a little sore. Don't hug me too tight. But
you know what? You guys can you can take this podcast whatever way you want. I think for us, it's just sharing. Again, sharing our lives with you so that if you do it, have done it, don't ever want to do it, hey, it's just what people do. Mm-hmm. And you guys know us better than many people. We don't judge. This isn't, we're hoping that you don't judge us for doing this or having done this. Because you know what? To the core, what it's all about are your values and your morals. And when it comes to your marriage, if this is occurring or it does occur, it's not going to rock those. Mm-hmm. It's not, my thing is, Alisa could get them or not get them. I'm not going to love her any less or more. Do I enjoy them? Sure. I who wouldn't? When you go from what Alisa said, flat, nothing, and we still have those pictures. Mm-hmm. And you look at that to what she is now and how she presents herself and how in the bedroom and around, it sure does bring a smile to my face and joy to me as well as to her. Mm-hmm. And so I think the big thing is that maybe why did we wait so long is an answer Alisa could.
I don't think I could have done it sooner. There's a part of me that's like, I do ask myself, I'm like, shoot, I should have done this years ago, but I wasn't ready. And I knew I had to get past having kids. Not that women, I know many women who have had implants and subsequently had children. But for me, I just wanted to be done with that phase of life. And then, once we had a daughter, that took some time to get around because I didn't want my daughter growing up going, well, if mom had implants, I'm going to get them when I'm 20. If I'm not big enough, I'm going to get them when I'm 20 or, whatever. I wanted to be able to say, you know what, hold on. Yes, I did. I have implants.
Well, and more specifically, why had we not told them sooner in the podcast?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant, okay. I think it's a matter of timing. It was definitely something I thought about, and then, different topics would take precedence over conversations. And it really was the conversations I had over the last couple of weeks dealing with augmentation that said, you know what, this is the time
to bring it up.
This is the time to bring it up, because there were times that I had thought about it over the last 2 years where I wasn't sure where the conversation was going to go.
Right.
I wasn't able to get around the whole, well, am I just doing this for, kind of self-revelation? Like, I just want to tell you guys I had implants. No, it was realizing over the last few weeks and sharing my story with other women here in San Diego that, once again, choosing to be transparent allows others to have the courage to do so and to suddenly develop stronger community because of that transparency, because they know, my girlfriends know that they, if I'm talking about it, it's fair game, and they can ask me questions and they can trust me with what they've got to deal with. And I'm not going to be going, oh my gosh, you did what? No, it's like, okay, well, my skeletons, my baggage. Mm-hmm. And so that's why it's taken 2 years to share this with you. But I hope that you'll take the message from this podcast to say, you know what? I do need to be more transparent in my life. If I've had surgery, and I know other women are kind of talking about it, but I'm the one keeping quiet, maybe it's time to say, hey, ladies, you know what? Been there, done that. Yeah, I got tiny little scars to prove it, whatever. Because that's going to give them courage. It's going to let them say, you know what? She survived.
Right.
I don't think, and if they think less of you, well, that just kind of reveals who they are.
And do you need them around?
If somebody looks at me and goes, oh, she had surgery, I'm not going to be friends with, okay, well, you know what? I don't have time for you.
Right.
So, be transparent, share your stories. And if you aren't comfortable enough putting it on, I hope you will put it on the one page, but if it's just something that you want to talk directly to me about, feel free to shoot me an email at askalisa@oneextraordinarymarriage.com. Maybe your surgery didn't go as well. Maybe, there are other things that you're not comfortable putting up on the website. I am happy to do an email correspondence with you. I will just give you a caveat. It takes me a day or two to get back to you.
Or 3 or 4.
Or 3 or 4 sometimes. So do that. But I would, if there's stuff that you want to share with me, I'm happy to listen, because I know that for some of you, you may not have that community to talk to.
Right.
And we are here for you, judgment free. And it's one of those things to start shedding some light on. It's not just the celebrities that get plastic surgery. The latest People cover person. It's real people. And, it's no
Christian people.
It's Christians. Oh my gosh. Christians have plastic surgery. Christians dye their hair. They get their eyebrows waxed,
you
all
guys
kinds
get
of stuff.
You guys get it. And so that's